Hi and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave and this is episode 635. And today's date is April 6, 2015. And the title of this episode is China's infrastructure bank enrollment closed and the U.S. is left out in the cold. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand April 9th is coming up. This means Greece is going to have to repay an IMF loan. And right now, a lot of people are out there saying that Greece does not have the money. They don't know where they're going to get it. Greece is there saying that, yes, we do have the money. And this is coming from Finance Minister Varoufakis. And he promised Christine Lagarde that Greece will repay the IMF loan. Now, we understand at this point in time, Greece is not going to impose austerity on its people. We realize they were put into office for this reason. No more austerity. So for them to continually get more money from the IMF, from the central banking system, they have to push austerity on the people because this is exactly what the central bankers want. Now, they aren't going to do this, and if they do, the people are going to rise up and pretty much kick them out of office. And this is why, and I think a lot of people are saying this now, that Greece might pivot to Russia. And we can see the Greek government has met with Putin. We understand there's a lot of financial incentive for Greece to pivot to Russia. And I don't think Russia is going to push austerity on the people of Greece. I think what they're going to do is help them, because we saw what they did with Cyprus. They restructured their entire loan, lowered the interest rate. We saw what they did with Cuba. They did the same thing. And we can see that they might do the same thing here in Greece, where they could pay off a lot of the loan. They can restructure it, help them out, spur economic growth, remove the food ban. And if this does occur, a lot of the other countries are ready and willing to leave the Eurozone because they're in the same situation and they're watching this very, very closely. So as we approach April 9th, we'll have to see how this entire thing turns out. And we have to remember, going all the way back to 2008 when Greece was initially bailed out, the central banking system told us that everything was fine. And we can see 7 years later, Greece is worse off. Actually, a Ukrainian government official looked at all the Eurozone countries and they looked at everything and said, wait a minute, everything the central banking system tells us to do in these countries has made it worse for those countries, not better. And we can see that just by looking at it. Now, here in the United States, we understand the U.S. government central bankers. They are keeping the people in this incredible illusion, making sure that no one realizes that we're heading towards a major, major collapse. And as we have seen, they've manipulated all the different numbers, unemployment, GDP, and inflation. We see the Baltic Dry Index at its lowest point, going back many, many years. Actually, if we look back just to last year, it is 3 times less than where it should be. And the Baltic Dry Index is that raw material that factories use to create products. Those products are then shipped to the retail outlets. And we can see right now that the people, they are tapped out. They just don't have the money to purchase. They don't have the money to purchase. The factories don't have to create these goods. And if the factories aren't creating these goods, guess what happens? They don't need the raw materials. So we can see that this is exactly what's taking place right now. And we see the ISM manufacturing has missed and tumbled to a near 2-year low. The ISM service met expectations at its lowest since June as business activity tumbled to 1-year lows. So what are we seeing here? We're seeing that things are not going well at all. Manufacturing is down. The consumers are not spending. And we see that the reason for this is because they cannot find those jobs. Wage growth for 80% of American workforce has sputtered and stalled. What does this tell you? People are not finding those high-paying jobs, and if they are in one, they're not getting raises. They're not keeping up with inflation. A lot of companies have pretty much stopped giving raises at this point, and everyone is in a freeze mode. Now, is this every single company? No, but it's the majority of them. With more than 3/4 of U.S. workers trapped in what we call wage growth hell, and whose only chance at seeing a pay hike appears to rest on holding out for a promotion that's probably not forthcoming, it doesn't exactly come as a surprise that self-reported consumer spending hit a 3-year low for March last month and has trended sharply lower this year when you compare this to 2014 and previous years. The first months of 2015, spending has been lower than it was for most months last year. And this shows up in retail. Stores are struggling right now. They're laying off people, they're closing stores, and as we come into the spring and summer, what is going to happen? Because as we know for retail, this is really not a good time. This is actually one of the worst periods for retail. We just passed the incredible time for retail. That was the holiday season, and that was a bust. During the holiday season, we had stores saying, you know what? We're going to be closing. We're going to be going out of business. Black Friday was a disaster. And we can see from this report here, things are not improving. And the United States government central bankers realizes this is why they continually manipulate these numbers. We see Japan has admitted that their rising wages data for 2014, they've been fabricated. And on close examination, all the optimistic increases in base wages was merely pre-election propaganda by the AIIB government. And what do we see here in the United States? We see the same thing. Even the Fed is saying, you know something, these numbers that the U.S. government are putting out right now, we don't know what to do with them because they're not making sense at this point. The Philly Fed admitted that it can no longer report its state coincident and leading indexes because the recent benchmark data revisions from the Bureau of Labor Statistics produced greater changes to the Philadelphia Fed's estimating methodology than are typical. The BLS has adjusted its data so much to fit in with its political propaganda goal-seek parameters, not even the Federal Reserve can make any sense of it and can no longer use it for its own data analysis purposes. Because everything here is manipulated. Unemployment, GDP, inflation, you name it, manipulated. Stock market, precious metals. The housing, manipulated. They are doing this on purpose to keep everyone confused that we are in a recovery, and they want everyone looking at the stock market. See? We are in a recovery. The stock market continually goes up. Precious metals are suppressed. We will pump up the real estate market. Don't look at the retail market because that's not doing well. And you can see they continually do this non-stop. And we can see right now, like I said in my other reports, the actual economic indicators that we discussed, like all the stores closing down, people losing their jobs because the stores have closed down, real estate not doing well, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac introducing the 3% down, bringing in more subprime people, banks introducing 0% down, we will pay for your closing cost, bring in the subprime people. If you're subprime, you still can't get a mortgage, don't worry, we're coming up with a new credit score that allows people that are even worse than the subprime to come in. They are doing this to continually pump up the bubble because this is the end game. And everything since 2008 has just gotten worse. Not gotten better whatsoever. And we can see right now, the countries around the world, they realize this. They understand what's going on. They are de-dollarizing right in front of our eyes. And we see the government of China close the enrollment window to join its new Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank as a founding member. The AIIB is designed essentially to displace the Western-controlled IMF and World Bank. And prior to last Tuesday's deadline, dozens of nations around the world, from New Zealand to Denmark to UK to Switzerland, all joined up. Everyone else in the world is getting it. They're realizing it. Well, yeah, the dollar is doomed. The United States government central bankers are going to push war. This is why they are provoking war around the world. They're picking a fight with anyone just to get this war started. I mean, we look at what's going on here. Practically the entire world is lining up against against the United States and going towards China with their new financial system. I mean, former U.S. Treasury Secretary Larry Summers summed it up, plainly saying that this may be remembered as the moment the United States lost its role as the underwriter of the global economic system. And did the U.S. join the AIIB? No, it did not. Yes, they said they were going to, but they were very concerned about how China was encrypting their data, and they made up a lot of excuses. And we see that the U.S. is isolated now. They're standing alone. Think about it. They keep telling us that China or Russia or any other country is isolated. Who is really isolated right now? If the rest of the world is joining up with the AIIB, we see more countries joining the BRICS system. Who is actually isolated at this point? It is the United States government central bankers. And we can see they're not just going to give up control of anything. This is why back in 2010, they promised they were going to give China and the emerging markets more voting power in the IMF. And they couldn't follow through because they knew what was going to happen. So they forced China and Russia to create a payment system, to create a credit rating agency, to create the BRICS system, to create the AIIB. And we can see that most of the other nations are following along because they understand what is coming. Here in the United States, what are they doing? What are our leaders? Actually, they're not even leaders. What are the overpaid government people doing? They are doing everything for themselves and for corporations and for the central bank. They are doing nothing for the people here in the United States. We see right now Obama, they're going to be flying millions of illegal immigrants into the United States. As long as their parent maintains any kind of legal status, they can apply to have their child picked up in Central America and flown into the U.S. to be reunited. Millions of children may qualify for the program under refugee status, and because of the refugee designation, once the children arrive in America, their families can apply for taxpayer-funded family reunification benefits that include education, food stamps, medical care, and other living expenses. When you look at this, you have to wonder, and I've said this before, why do we even have a border? Because once you make it over, DHS, Border Patrol, cannot touch you because of the President's memorandum. All that needs to happen now is for one parent to put their foot across the border, since U.S. Border Patrol agents have been told to just let the illegal aliens go. Once they're here, they can apply for any number of legal statuses and have their families flown in. They will, of course, never be deported because doing so to an entire family would be inhumane. But again, look at the struggling people that are already here in the United States that cannot find jobs. And you have to scratch your head and wonder, why are they bringing in all these illegals? Why did the president wait for after the elections to put forth his memorandum because he knew the American people were completely against this, and this was only for the corporations because Obama put out Obamacare to help the insurance companies, I should say, and in that document there was a penalty because the government wanted to bring in revenue for anyone who didn't, comply with Obamacare. There was a $3,000 penalty, and illegals are not covered by that, so they can go ahead and work for these companies, and the companies do not have to pay any type of penalty. And we see that, the American people are not for this. The corporations are for this. And the politicians are funded by the corporations. The majority of U.S. voters think their government should be more aggressive about deporting illegal immigrants, dislike automatic citizenship, and oppose President Obama's amnesty plan. And this is coming from a new survey from Rasmussen Reports. A nationwide phone survey found that 62% of likely voters polled believe the government is not aggressive enough in deporting illegal immigrants, and they should do more. And we can see right now that they're not going to do anything. They're letting them in. And there's absolutely no reason to have borders at this point in time, because anyone that comes over, it's okay. And all of this is going to wreak havoc on our system because we already have Americans who came in here legally, who applied for citizenship, going through the channels, can't find work. And I have no problem anyone coming into this country. I mean, this is how this country was built, and I have no problem with that, as long as they follow the procedure to come in. Just stepping over the border is not the proper procedure, because that means anybody can come in. Criminals, people who have sicknesses or diseases. This is why when people came into America, they were stopped at Ellis Island, because they were checked. Oh, wait a minute, you're carrying a disease. Wait, you're a criminal. They would turn people away. But of course, not today. It's a completely different story. Now, we understand that this collapse is accelerating, and we see the numbers that the government puts out, and what's really going on is completely separating. They're going the opposite directions. And we understand that the government is practicing for a major collapse, and not just here in the United States. We see, since the latest terrorism hit Canada, Australia, France, Belgium, they all have militarized police on the ground. They're all introducing draconian laws to remove the freedom of speech, to remove the rights of the people, to control what you see on the internet. They're doing this on purpose because they understand what is coming, and they need, in their minds, they need to maintain control because they don't want to give up their power. The Department of Homeland Security right now is making another run at connecting to a database containing the location of most of the drivers in the United States. DHS is seeking bids from companies that can connect it to a system of nationwide license plate readers. Such information will give the agency a pretty good idea of where most cars and thus most drivers are at any given time, to basically track you down, to keep an eye on you and keep it all in a database of everywhere you've been. The department first tried to get such a contract last year for Immigration and Customs Enforcement to track undocumented immigrants suspected of crimes. But after concerns that the information gleaned from the system would be used to find the whereabouts of innocent citizens as well, DHS Secretary Jade Johnson canceled the plan. Well, now he's reintroducing it. He just stepped back for a moment, let everyone calm down, and now he introduced it. But he said there's more privacy protection built up, which means it's exactly the same thing. Nothing has changed. He just used words to make everyone feel more comfortable. Some privacy advocates aren't impressed, however. If this goes forward, DHS will have warrantless access to location information going back at least 5 years about virtually every adult driver in the U.S., and sometimes to their image as well. So they will have all the information at their fingertips if this moves forward. And we can see this is exactly what they've been doing all along. The NSA has been spying on every single person. They want to know where your money is. They want to know what transactions you've been making. They want to know who you've been writing emails to, who you've been in contact with. And now they want to track every single movement of every single person. They have a facial recognition database because they have to make sure that everyone is accounted for when this collapse occurs. And this is what they're doing at this point. And as they do this, they're taking away more and more rights of the people. And we can see with Jade Helm that's coming up in July that the powers that be, they're getting ready for this collapse. They understand they can just hold this together for just a little bit longer. I don't think it's going to go much further than where we are right now. Maybe to the end of the year, maybe to the beginning of next year. But I do believe that we're getting to a point now where the illusionary numbers and what's really going on is starting to separate, and there's no way they can explain what is going on with all the information coming out. We see they're ramping up war in Ukraine. We see they're ramping up war in the Middle East. We see they're ramping up war in Africa. And they're provoking as many countries as they possibly can. We see the allies of the United States government central bankers are now protecting themselves by going with China, with the BRIC system, with AIIB. They're setting up clearinghouses, bilateral trades, making sure their countries are protected, just in case the dollar collapses. And we know it is. From everything we've been looking at, we see it. I mean, from the beginning to right now, from 2008, even back further, but if we just go from 2008, we can see what has been going on all along. And we've been putting the pieces together, showing that yes, the collapse is coming. And that is a fact. Because everything that we talked about, everything that we discussed, is heading in that direction. When way back last year when I said, they're moving military assets, they're pivoting to Asia, and they'll be moving more military assets for war, everyone's like, no, they're not moving military assets. They're not doing that. That's ridiculous. And now we see that it has tripled since I was talking about a year and a half ago. And things are starting to really ramp up at this time. Now, out in Ukraine, we understand the economy is not doing well. Ever since the coup d'etat and the U.S. government central bankers spent $5 billion in overthrowing Yanukovych, the economy has completely fallen apart in Ukraine. War is nonstop. The people are suffering. The IMF, of course, comes out with their predictions and how the economy is going to get better, and it just continually gets worse. And right now, the Ukrainian economy suffers a 15% drop in GDP in the first 100 days of 2015. Everything the IMF predicts seems to come out the opposite way and about 3 times as worse. We see that there was a protest in Ukraine, and of course this protest was being blocked. Ukrainians were safely able to express their loathing of the U.S. Embassy in Kiev on April 1st by mooing as a non-verbal expression against the regime controls inside the compound, telling them, in effect, we are not cattle. The police state prohibited this event from being broadcast and removed it even from the internet locally. But again, as we see as the internet goes, things leak out. Videos make it onto YouTube, and we see that the video has been leaked, and we can see that there are protesters out there. They want the government in Kiev removed. Yatsenyuk right now is being accused of corruption, and we see Yatsenyuk is out there trying to defend himself, saying, listen, I can name those people who are behind the corruption schemes. It's just not me. It's everybody else. And we know that it's him. It's the entire, most likely the entire government that the United States government central bankers put into place. The government now has embarked on an unprecedented struggle against corruption. I have received an official letter from the Prosecutor General's office. I will refer all materials there. If they want to see me, I will go there. And we have to remember Nikolai Gordienko publicly accused Yatsenyuk government of corruption, and the people there want him removed. It's starting to fall apart in Ukraine. And we see at this point in time, they're not really abiding by the Minsk II agreement. They're stalling. They're getting ready for a major offensive. They still have the Donbass area blocked. And we see that the Donbass leaders are calling for Germany, France, who were part of the Minsk deal, to call on Kiev to abide by the Minsk deal, saying, listen, it is time to pay the pensions of the people to the people in Donbass. And what they're saying is that Kiev is pocketing the money that it has to transfer for social payments in war-torn areas, the rebel leader said, calling on Germany and France to put pressure on Poroshenko to pay these people. They owe the money to the pensioners, and they are not receiving. And they're saying that the Ukrainian leadership is continuing the blockade, including that of Donbass banking system. It is stealing the pensions of more than 1 million people. And of course, the Ukrainian officials are out there saying that paying the pensions right now is absolutely impossible. We physically cannot do it. We're too busy mounting an offensive. I stress that the government is ready to deliver on its obligation in full, but we physically cannot do it. And those are just words. If they really wanted to pay these people, they can. They don't, because they realize what is coming. They want to keep the blockade up. They don't want the people to have the money. They want the people to starve, suffer. So when it's time for them to mount a major offensive, they have the upper hand. This is what they are doing at this point. Moscow says they are ready to discuss sending peacekeepers to East Ukraine's Donbass in a meeting with envoys from Kiev, Berlin, and Paris. This is from Sergei Lavrov. We clearly, as a polite people, are ready to listen to suggestions of our Ukrainian colleagues. When we meet again next time, on one level or another, in the Normandy format, we will discuss this. And Lavrov is saying that he's concerned that they're not using this as a tactical trick, because they've done this before. And there's people out there who are political experts, military experts, and they're saying that the proposal by Kiev to introduce peacekeepers to the Donbass region would be a long, complicated process, and this could only benefit Kiev in the long run. The Ukrainian authorities, together with their backers in Washington and Brussels, are aware of the geopolitical benefits that additional time may give them. And this is the training of the soldiers. This is the weapons that are being brought into Ukraine, the tanks that are being brought in at this time. This could provide a pretext for Kiev re-employing its military and paramilitary forces against the Donbass, which is their ultimate goal. And this is why they want it. Also, the people in the southeastern region intercepted documents saying that they were going to put individuals into these areas. Now, these individuals could have been part of the peacekeeping force that they want to place into this area, to destabilize the area, to set up a false flag event. And we see right now that war with the southeastern people and eventually Russia is now much more likelier. Because as we know, the Ukrainian army has appointed the right-wing Dmitry Jarosh as official advisor to the army leadership. His militias are officially part of the army under the leadership of the independent Jarosh. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Thus, the right-wing extremists also gain access to U.S. weapons and weapons that are financed by European taxpayers. The militias of the right sector in Ukraine are now greatly enhanced by the appointment which was made on Sunday, April 5th. The chief of Ukraine's armed forces General Viktor Machenko is thus incorporating the far-right militias into his army. It's like a special force. And these are like those Nazi type of people that are in Ukraine. It's almost like the SS. And we can see that they are doing this because they want a strong fighting force. And this is why they are doing this at this point. And this doesn't show they're following the Minsk II agreement. It shows that they're not interested in the ceasefire. It shows that they're getting ready for a major all-out offensive. This is why Poroshenko introduced the bill for martial law in that region, in the Donbass region. Because as we know, the right sector right now has refused to accept the Minsk agreement. The militias are considered particularly ideological and determined to continue the fight by any and all means. Because who controls them? The U.S. government, central bankers. It's like their own little special force. Almost like the Islamic State. It's their proxy army. And they're not agreeing to anything. They want to push through. They want this war hot. And they will do anything to do it. And we can see this is exactly what's going on right now. They are pushing war as hard as they possibly can. And they're using the time to build up their military force for the United States to bring in more lethal weapons. Because as we know, they're bringing in the Bradley and Abrams tanks into the country at this time. And once they're ready, they are going to go all out. And most likely it will be a false flag event. Because as we've been seeing recently, is that all of a sudden there's explosives on passenger trains, explosives in the city of Kiev, and they're saying it's coming from the southeastern region. And when they're ready, they're going to use all that propaganda for the major false flag to say, see, the southeastern people did this, we need to go to war. And this is what they've been building up for. Now, as we know, the U.S. and Iran, they've come to a deal, and there are other countries involved in this, Russia and many others. And we can see that Iran is putting out what they think the deal is, and the U.S. is putting out what they believe the deal is. And of course, under all of this, they left out the most important thing, which most likely was supposed to be kept a secret, because the central bankers normally keep anything with financial dealings a secret, and they make you believe that they're doing all of this for another reason. And right now they have you believing that all of this was done because of the nuclear bomb threat, which doesn't exist whatsoever. And we see that Tehran accuses the U.S. of spinning the nuclear deal. They're saying a lot of things they're talking about did not happen, which we did not agree upon. Russia right now is opposed in the deal to snap back inspections and phased out sanctions. They want it all dropped all at once. Russia is a UN Security Council member and is present in the meetings, and I doubt that Russia was going to agree with the State Department's version. And we have to remember, Iran was never in violation of the NPT. They always had IAEA inspections, and none of it has ever shown that they were building any type of nuclear weapon whatsoever. And we know they're going to have access to Iran's bank, I should say, and we know that they have a lot of oil, a lot of gas, and it's amazing how nothing was mentioned and what they're going to sell that for. And is the IMF going to take over control of the central banking system inside of Iran and loan them more money, put them into debt? And we can see right now, this is part of the deal. And you have to remember, Obama has kept the deal under lock and key. Only certain members can go into this specialized room. You have to empty your pockets, leave your phone, sign in, go into the room, read the document. Once you've read it, you can't take it out, you can't make a copy, and you have to leave. So something else is in there, because the whole entire nuclear talk makes no sense, because they were in line with the NPT. They were in line with their inspections. And just reducing some of their nuclear material. It makes no sense, because what does the U.S. actually gain out of this from making the deal? Think about it in those terms. What are they actually going to gain? Because the only reason you make a deal is to get something in return. What are they getting that they were so ready to go ahead and make a deal? Well, they're going to have new business. They have a whole bunch of new oil that they can use the dollar, where they can sell the oil using the dollar. They can take over the central bank. They can spread the debt further. So all of this with the nuclear talks, what did they gain with that? Absolutely nothing. Because really, Iran was abiding by everything the NPT said and the IAEA said. There were no violations. Now, out in the Middle East, what do we see? We see Libya having the same problem as Yemen, having the same problem as Lebanon, having the same problem as Iraq. The people in each and every one of these countries are fighting back. They want the United States government central bankers out. They want their countries back. Libya right now says, listen, we don't want bombing inside our country. We don't want the U.S. to come in here. We want weapons. We want aid at this time. We can handle what is going on here. But again, the government in Libya is not in control. The people are. The same thing that is happening in Yemen. And we understand that the people are starting to sell the oil not using the dollar. And we understand that the central bankers will not stand for this. Just like they lost Yemen very quickly, the same thing is happening in Libya. And eventually, they will turn the bombing on in Libya. Then Lebanon, Iraq, it's already happening. And then they'll move their forces towards Syria. And all of this is to retake control of the Middle East. Because if they lose the Middle East and the countries are able to take back their country by throwing out the puppet regime, they will sell the oil not using the dollar. If that occurs, most of the countries will not need to hold dollars in reserve because they won't need it to pay for the oil. They might be able to hold yuan in reserves to pay for the oil. They might hold the ruble in reserves, or the euro, or gold. And there would be no need for the petrodollar. And that dollar then would flow back or flood back into the United States, and we would see a devaluation, which means inflation here in the United States. And this is what they're trying to prevent. And this is why there's many different agendas happening at this point, especially with Iran. The central bankers, they want to get into Iran any way possible and take control of their natural resources and their banking system. Israel has a different agenda, and they control part of Congress because, again, they contribute to their campaign fund. So they're controlling those people. And again, what we have is many different agendas going on at this point, and none of it has to do with the people here in the United States. So basically, our government has been infiltrated. They're not working for us anymore. They haven't for a very, very, very long time. Because they were infiltrated by other countries, by the banking system, and by greed. We see in Saudi Arabia, Russia and the Red Cross were calling for a timeout. Let's bring in some humanitarian aid, help those people that were hit, most of them civilians. Russia was asking the same thing, and Saudi Arabia says aid will be allowed into Yemen when conditions are right. What does that mean? When is the right time? Are they saying when we completely take back Yemen? Is that when the conditions are right? And right now, they're saying that no, we're not going to allow the Red Cross in there until the situation there calms down and the conditions on the ground are basically controlled. Right now, we can see that they've closed airports, they restricted movements at seaports, and all the aid delivery is being restricted at this time. There are reports that the Houthis, they've controlled and taken over the eastern seaport of Aden. There are other places saying that no, they have not. And we'll have to wait to see if they actually have taken over and they have control of that area. And we can see right now, Saudi Arabia and the U.S. has put out a warning to the people in Yemen, the U.S. people, saying that they should leave at this point. Russia is continually evacuating all their people. China is evacuating their people. India is evacuating the people. And the United States really isn't evacuating the people. They're telling them to leave on their own. I believe this warning is coming out because they're getting ready for a major, major ground invasion to take control of all the different areas, because bombing will only get you so far unless they surrender, and it doesn't look like anytime soon the Houthis are ready to surrender. We see in Iraq, the Islamic State, the proxy army for the United States government central bankers, they have used chemical weapons. Chlorine gas and ammonium nitrate were found in the explosive devices planted by the Islamic State terrorists on roads and inside houses. The same explosives were also found in car bombs. And again, this is a proxy army of the United States government, central bankers, UK, Israel, and other nations. They're using it to get into Syria, to create chaos in all these countries. And we have to remember that it was the Free Syrian Army that used sarin gas, and we see the Islamic State is using the chlorine gas. Assad is not using the chlorine gas. This is all propaganda to take all eyes off of what's going on with the Islamic State and put it on Assad and try to create an atmosphere that he's using chemical weapons once again. But we know it is from the Islamic State. They're the ones who are using chlorine gas in Iraq, and they're the ones who are using it in Syria. Now we understand the Islamic State in Syria is very close to Damascus. They've captured the Yarmouk refugee camp in Syria, and part of it the Islamic State controls, the other part the Assad forces control. And right now the UN Security Council on Monday demanded humanitarian aid access to the Yarmouk refugee camp in Syria, and we're going to have to see how that turns out and see if aid can get to those people. And we have to remember the Islamic State has tripled their territory since the United States has been bombing in Syria. This is what they wanted to do back in August of 2013 to help the Free Syrian Army. But as we know, the Free Syrian Army defects as soon as they're trained to go right into the Islamic State. That is the ground force. The United States, the coalition forces, Israel, that is the air force to pretty much bomb the area where the Islamic State can maneuver their forces closer and closer to Assad and eventually take him out. This is their plan. And eventually they will have to bring in U.S. forces to try to take control of this region. We see here in the United States, a dirty bomb will be located in Richmond, California on Saturday, April 11th. And more than 200 soldiers, airmen, local law enforcement, and firefighting personnel will descend upon the city in order to defuse the situation as part of an emergency response exercise. And we can see right now we're seeing a lot of these exercises going on. And as we know, when we see these exercises, a lot of them that are being done could go live. We saw it happen in 9/11. We saw it happen in the Boston bombing. And this is why we take a look and track each one of these. So April 11th, Saturday, let's just keep that in mind. We understand that Jade Helm is having their drills from July till September. And these drills, the sophistication and the amount of power and what they're doing, it could go live, depending on the call that is done at the time. Or these drills are being done to get everyone accustomed to having military on the street. So when something does go down, people will think it's a drill when actually it's a real event. And this way it will catch everyone off guard for them to round up all of these people. The drill is definitely about extractions of potential dissident leadership based upon a list given to the Army Special Operation Forces. And we saw this happen in Ukraine. Remember, the United States government central bankers controlled the armed forces there, the anti-terrorism force. They went to the town in Donbass and said, listen, give me the list of those people. And they asked the local authorities there of who would be a threat. And they handed it over. And those are the people they went after at the time. Professor Margaret Hugh from the Washington and Lee University School of Law states that the implementation of universal digitized biometric ID systems risks normalizing and integrating mass cyber surveillance into the daily lives of ordinary citizens. And when the system shows up in Jade Helm, we should all be worried. Professor Hugh explains, a comprehensive, centralized, and technologically interoperable biometric database that spans across military and national security agencies as well as other state and federal government agencies. Once complete, NGI will strive to centralize whatever biometric data is available on all citizens and non-citizens in the United States and abroad, including information on fingerprints, DNA, iris scans, voice recognition, and facial recognition data captured through digitalized photos such as U.S. passports and Real ID. And we know this is what they're doing. We understand that they're going to integrate all of this in. And if Jade Helm does report they're using this during their drills, we need to be worried, because we understand they're bringing in people to be undercover, to blend in, which I believe is already happening. We always find this information out after it's already in operation. They've already started the blending in to confuse people, to make people, they were part of this before Jade Helm. And this is how they infiltrate these groups. And we can see that they might go ahead, and these agent provocateurs might try to get these groups to do something. And they will start them out just like in Ferguson when those police officers were undercover police officers were detected that they were agent provocateurs. They were the ones throwing rocks and burning things to get the people going. We can see the same thing happening here. And we realize that Jade Helm is occurring in many more states than what they're telling us. And I can see them trying to push this agenda, and I could see them trying to create an instance of, you see all these people, they're getting out of control, they're using weapons, we have to declare martial law. And this could be one scenario of Jade Helm. The other one, of course, is that they're having this drill to get everyone used to what is coming. Or this is the real thing. The entire system is going to collapse during July and September. They don't know the exact date when it will fall apart, but they know from their experts and everything they're seeing that it will fall apart, and they want everything in place. So when the complete collapse comes, all they have to do is give the green light, and that baby goes live. Maybe in the beginning they'll be practicing July, August, and then September hits, and they say, okay, we see what's going on here. We're going to create an event to blame it on another country. We're going to give the Jade Helm Special Operation soldiers the green light, and we are going live. And all of a sudden the stock market completely crashes, people panic, and everything is in place to maintain control. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.